Hey everyone, welcome to our Q&A discussion on the voice referendum today. With us, we have Kate Carter, Sam Fowler, Barvinch and Larissa Ahoy, and Montana from the LSS as well. Before we begin, I would like to do my acknowledgement of country. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their continued connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and future, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people today. I would also like to acknowledge the Noongar Whadjuk elders, where I'm joining you from today. Would anyone else like to do an acknowledgement of country?
I would just like to acknowledge the Anawan people as the custodians of the land where myself, Larissa, Bar and Sam are currently joining me from. And I'd also like to acknowledge that they've shared in the caring of this country with the Bumbangi, Dunghutti and Gamilaroi nations, and pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging.
Yes, I endorse that too. Thank you.
All right, so let's begin. Our first question is, what is the Constitution?
Okay, I thought Kate would start. I can start if you'd like. So from my perspective, or from what I know about the Constitution, it's a document that came into being in about 1901, I think it was. And it's essentially a document that's been written for the country. It's a set of rules, if you like, which assist politicians of the day, because politicians come and politicians go. It assists them in the running of the country. And it's always been known as a living document. It's not a document that's been created, set in stone and never to be touched again. That's not what a constitution is. The Constitution is a living document which is supposed to respond to the needs of any particular period in time for that country. And so that's why we're here today looking at changing the Constitution to respond to particular needs of this particular time.
So what is a referendum, and in regards to other elections, how is it different?
Well, a referendum is when the Constitution can only be changed by a referendum, which means it's a vote of all the people in the country. All the electors get to vote on it. Other elections are electing representatives for government. So the Constitution, which saw the change from there being separate colonies of Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, and so on, turned into one organisation, which was Australia. And that constitution, as Kate said, came in 1901. And in order for it to be a document that reflects the country, it can only be altered by the people who are the electors. So if you're in any sort of community organisation, you'd know that you have a constitution, and the committee that you elect can't change the constitution. The constitution sets down broad guidelines for the running of that organisation. So that's, and referendums have to be called by the government, but they are voted on by all the people of Australia. And it's different from other elections in that you have to have a double majority, which means you have to have a majority of all the people who voted for whatever the issue is, plus a majority in a majority of states. And we have 6 states. The 2 territories don't get counted in that second lot. So you have to have 4 states who will vote in favour for it to pass. So it's a double majority, it's called. So there are 2 separate counts.
So why don't the territories count in the double majority?
Because they weren't part of the states that combined. So they would like that to change, I think. So certainly the ACT and the Northern Territory, the people there feel That might be another thing that ought to change in the Constitution, or that they ought to become states and not territories. So they're Commonwealth territories.
Yeah. So when deciding how do you do how is the result of the referendum decided?
Okay, they count all the formal votes for the whole nation, and you have to get 50% plus one for it to go through. And that's one count. And then the second one is that you have to have 50% plus one in 4 states.
Okay. And what is the Uluru Statement from the Heart?
Somebody else have a go?
Larissa, do you want to talk to that one a little bit?
So from what I gather, the Uluru Statement from the Heart was a document that was like a lot of Aboriginal people met and got together, and I think was 220 or 250 signatures.
Yeah.
That combined from all over the country to sign the Uluru Statement as a way of asking for recognition, for asking for a few things in that document, but it was a combined initiative from Australia all over the nation.
I'll just, sorry, Barb, you go.
Go on, you go.
I was just going to add, so essentially the document asks for 3 things: voice, truth-telling, and treaty.
Mm-hmm. I was just going to say the process leading up to it was the government wanted to I think almost everybody wanted to recognise Aboriginal people as the first peoples in the country, and they didn't just want that mention in the Constitution. So the coalition government set up a series of workshops all around the country, dialogues they were called, where in different regions, to talk through what they would want as part of recognition and how they would want that recognition to be. And then representatives from each of those dialogues, as they say, from all corners of the sky, from all parts of the country, came together at Uluru. So they were representing a whole lot of discussions that had been had around the country to come up with that statement.
And can I just add to that, Evelyn, that this process has been a long process. The dialogues that Bar's talking about commenced in 2015, and the statement itself was written in 2017. And of course, now we're in 2023. So this is not a sudden idea. This is not a new thing. This is something that's been worked upon for many, many years now, with lots and lots of consultation with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people themselves right around the country, as Bar has said. I wonder if I could read the statement.
Yeah, of course. That'd be great.
Okay. Because I think it's really important that people understand what it says, because I know that there's a lot of fear out there around what it's asking for. And just make the point that it is written to us as people. It's not written just for the government. It's a petition or a statement that's been written to all Australian people. So I'll just read it. It says, "We gathered at the 2017 National Constitutional Convention, coming from all points of the southern sky, make this statement from the heart. Our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander tribes were the first sovereign nations of the Australian continent and its adjacent islands, and possessed it under our own laws and customs. This our ancestors did according to the reckoning of our culture, from the creation, according to the common law, from time immemorial, and according to science more than 60,000 years ago. This sovereignty is a spiritual notion. The ancestral tie between the land, or Mother Nature, and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who were born therefrom remain attached thereto, and must one day return thither to be united with our ancestors. This link is the basis of the ownership of the soil, or better, of sovereignty. It has never been ceded or extinguished and coexists with the sovereignty of the Crown. How could it be otherwise? That peoples possessed a land for 60 millennia, and this sacred link disappears from world history in merely the last 200 years. With substantive constitutional change and a structural reform, we believe this ancient sovereignty can shine through as a fuller expression of Australia's nationhood. Proportionally, we are the most incarcerated people on the planet. We are not an innately criminal people. Our children are alienated from their families at unprecedented rates. This cannot be because we have no love for them. And our youth languish in detention in obscene numbers. They should be our hope for the future. These dimensions of our crisis tell plainly the structural nature of our problem. This is the torment of our powerlessness. We seek constitutional reforms to empower our people and take a rightful place in our own country. When we have power over our destiny, our children will flourish. They will walk in two worlds and their culture will be a gift to their country. We call for the establishment of a First Nations voice enshrined in the Constitution. Makarrata is the culmination of our agenda, the coming together after a struggle. It captures our aspirations for a fair and truthful relationship with the people of Australia and a better future for our children based on justice and self-determination. We seek a Makarrata Commission to supervise a process of agreement making between governments and First Nations and truth-telling about our history. In 1967, we were counted. In 2017, we seek to be heard. We leave base camp and start our trek across this vast country. We invite you to walk with us in a movement of the Australian people for a better future. So I don't know what other people think about that, but there's nothing frightening in that to me. It's simply a call to all Australian people to be a part of change for the betterment of everybody.
Yeah, and just to be heard and recognised as part of being the first peoples of Australia, right?
Mm.
So would you say that would be the reasons why what led the Uluru Statement to be written, for recognition, to be seen, to have a voice in the Australian Constitution, or would there be more to it?
I think there's more to it because we've been hearing about this initiative called Closing the Gap for a long time now, and the gaps that we're talking about are in health, education, in economic or access to economic stability, if you like, in overrepresentation in the criminal justice system, in overrepresentation in the child protection system, and so on. So those are the areas that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people themselves, they know about these areas that need to be addressed. And it's through having a voice that this is a solution. Whatever we've been doing for the last decade around closing the gap clearly hasn't been working, because we wouldn't be seeing the same statistics today, some of them even worse than when closing the gap first came into being as a government initiative. So this is First Nations people saying, we've got a way to deal with these issues. Here's the first step, which is to allow us to speak for ourselves, which is the voice. That's what the voice is.
Yeah.
Sorry, Evelyn.
Where you go, Sam?
I was just going to add exactly what Kate was saying. I saw this great video on LinkedIn this week where they really kind of liken it to women getting a vote and women having a say about matters that pertain to them. So reproductive rights and things like that. We don't find that controversial, I suppose, anymore, that women would expect to have a say in things that particularly affect them, and that they're in the best position to make comment, make decisions, provide information and insight on matters that pertain to them. And I found that really interesting, and yeah, I just like to share, I suppose.
Yeah,
Very
I
good.
mean, I think it is a strengthening of democracy. I mean, farmers often know what's the right thing to do on their land, and then the government says, oh, we've got this program, here's some money, do this. And they say, oh, but that won't work round here. Well, they say, well, just take the money and do it. And the similar things happened with Aboriginal stuff, that people say, oh, what they need is X, and we'll deliver that. We'll spend millions on giving you this kind of thing. And they say, no, but we live here and we know the right thing, and it's not that. And you could save money even by targeting the money more intelligently on the basis of the people who are at the coalface knowing what's the right thing to do.
I agree, listening, because like, who knows better than the person who needs the money, who knows where it needs to go, instead of being told what to do with it, right? Yeah.
And as I said before, Evelyn, this is not a new thing. I'll just change my slide there. Calls for voices have been happening for a very, very long time, and you can see from the slide on the screen across just the 20th century, we've got 5 different calls there, none of which were successful, although the last one there in 1988 was partially successful. It led to ATSIC, that body called ATSIC, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Commission, being legislated into being at the time. But this is not a new phenomenon.
Yeah, and it's surprising to see that it was going back since 1937 that they were asking for some sort of recognition so early on, and still being denied.
Much earlier than that, in fact. There were things in the 1800s where people petitioned Queen Victoria through the government, and the government in Australia, or that colony, said, oh, I don't think we'll send this on. She doesn't want to know that, and did nothing about it. So there have been very respectful approaches to government repeatedly. And as Kate said, that last one did lead to the setting up of ATSIC. However, a subsequent government said, look, ATSIC's not working, we'll abolish it, and just threw it out, the baby and the bathwater. So that actually leads on to the next question. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead. But
sorry. But I suppose that is the benefit of having it put in the Constitution, that the new government coming in can't make that decision to have it removed, because it's been put in the Constitution. It's there.
Here's another useful slide. So as you can see, the ATSIC went from 1989, but in 2005, it was decided that, no, it's not really working, so we'll just get rid of it. And an interesting impact locally here in Armidale was there was a scheme called CDEP, Community Development Employment Program, which was basically a work for the dole scheme, so that people who were on unemployment benefits would work 2 or 3 days a week in an organisation. And in Armidale, there were 370 people employed in that scheme, doing work for the university and council, various jobs. Lots of people hadn't worked before, even because of sort of endemic unemployment at that time. And they were getting skills. Some went on to apprenticeships and got jobs. But at the stroke of a pen, all of those people, their work was terminated, and they went back onto sitting at home and getting the dole, which is no good for anybody's self-respect. So it has a very big impact if it's not secure as legislation.
Yeah. So what are the changes that they're proposing will be made in the Constitution?
Yes.
You got that, Kate. I haven't got the wording in front of me.
I've got it here. And this is just if I flip back here for a minute to show you the bodies that have been legislated, to then what is being put forward as the change to the Constitution. Because, you know, the difference is that with legislation, will our elected politicians get to vote legislation in and out of being? And that's the reason why the voice is being asked, or the voice is asking for this to be put into the Constitution. So what is written here, so that it can't then, just be shifted in and out at the whim of whoever happens to be in power, which again leads to why politicians don't vote on constitutional changes. The Australian people vote through a referendum on what goes into the Constitution, and then our politicians follow that, which is the important distinction to make here as to why putting it into the Constitution is the far safer thing to do, because once it's in there, once Australians agree this is the way that we want to go, then it exists in there, and we would need to hold another referendum to change it to something else. But essentially, there's nothing going to be removed from the Constitution as it exists today. It's not about crossing out words or removing whole chunks. It's simply about inserting this new chapter. You can see here it's very small, and it says there, so it'll be chapter 9 there. It will go in, and it's called Recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Peoples. And it's in recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the first peoples of Australia. That makes sense to me. That there will be a body to be called the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Voice. That this voice may make representations to the Parliament and the executive government of the Commonwealth, whoever they might be at that particular time, on matters relating to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. So it's not asking, we're not putting into the Constitution that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people can create new policy for the whole of Australia, for example. They're simply representing to the Parliament on matters that are, directly affecting them. And that based on that advice, the Parliament shall, subject to this Constitution, have power to make laws with respect to matters relating to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice, including its composition, its functions, its powers and procedures. So the people who will be representatives on this body called the Voice will actually be the ones, the government will be the ones, the government of the day will be the people who decide who those people are, how many of them there are, what their function will be, what their powers will be. So that's essentially what we're being asked to vote on.
Yeah, so it leaves all the power of all the policies in the hands of the Parliament that we all elect. So we can elect, and we do every 3 years, a different composition in that Parliament. So whoever we elect there, the power stays with them to make any laws. Yeah.
And if we don't agree with the government of the day and what they've decided when it comes to this, we have the right to vote in a new government that will make the changes that they promise to make and that we think will be a better fit. So the power,
population, yeah.
The power is a cyclical process.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. And the other thing I'd say about this is what is really strong about this, and I think, Bar, you've mentioned that this strengthens our democracy, is that just as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people will have the opportunity to speak about matters pertaining to them, governments also then will be held to account if they don't listen, or, they have the right not to take the advice, but they have to be able to then provide good reasons why they've chosen not to take that advice. So in a sense, it's making it safer for everybody.
Yeah, I agree. So there's so much information out there about the voice. How do you determine what is factual and what's not? Like, how do you know that you're taking on the right, because like I know that I've come across so much misinformation and I've heard so much from other people. How do you know what you're hearing is actually correct?
Kate, you put up a slide.
I'll put up a slide. Look, I work at a university. In fact, myself, Larissa, Sam, all work at a university. Evelyn, you and Montana and Jordana are studying at university. You may also be working. Not trying to exclude you, Bar, at all.
All right.
but you know, universities are about information, and they're all about the quality of information and the difference between your opinion on a matter and what the evidence shows on that matter. So often our opinion on a matter can be different to what the evidence shows. You know, a great example is that, you know, XYZ football team is the best team. Well, that's an opinion. It's not necessarily factual. So at university, for me, it's all about accessing high quality information. And I do realise there's a lot of information out there. There's a huge range, as you pointed out, Evelyn, but there's also a huge range of really high quality information too. And it's really not that hard to find. The first file I've got up here is a really great information booklet that has been written by the federal government. It's a PDF that people can download from there, and I'll make these slides available to you, Evelyn, if you'd like as well. But then there's a whole lot of other articles there which I've put up, which come from a site called The Conversation Australia. It's a news website. I believe it's a really high quality site because all of the articles are researched articles written by academics from tertiary education institutions, which again is what we're all about here. So I really encourage people to not just look on Facebook or YouTube or TikTok.
I was about to ask. I think you'd missed Facebook on your list there, Kate. Was that intentional?
Just a little. I'm not denigrating those sources as great places to go, but they are sources usually where people's opinions have greater value than the evidence. And it's important in an issue like this, where we're all being asked to vote in a national referendum, that we are informed. We're informed with high quality information. So, for example, I've heard people saying, yeah, but I've heard various Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people don't want a voice. They're going to vote no. That's a fact. But the other fact of that matter is that 80%, actually a little bit more than 80% of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people support the voice. So we have to be really careful with how we use little bits of information. We have to make sure that we look at it as part of the whole information, because there's a big difference between 3 prominent Aboriginal people often on your television screen as compared to 80% of all Australian First Peoples saying that they support the voice.
Yeah, there also, I should say, I mean, getting information from the government source about the actual wording, we've just had all that, and that's very clear. But the brochure that came out from the Electoral Commission was information, and they said it clearly. This has been prepared by parliamentarians who support yes and parliamentarians who support no, and they could say whatever they wanted, and the Electoral Commission just presented it exactly as they put it. And so people have fact-checked some of that, and you can go and look up fact-check for those cases, and not all of that information is accurate. So there are statements like, this is really risky, and it's like, what's the basis of saying that, given that legal experts have said, no, there isn't any risk, it won't turn into a bum fight at the High Court. So not everything you read is accurate. So find people that you generally trust. So academics, if you trust them. I mean, if you have cancer, you'd go to a cancer expert. So go to experts. and try and filter out the difference between opinions and facts. It's absolutely fine for people to have opinions, but if they're making statements that they can't back up with any research, then be a bit skeptical.
Agreed. This question came directly from a UNE student. And we sort of slightly touched on this already with how the way Aboriginal people are fighting, but this particular question was, being Aboriginal, what's the right thing for me to do? Is a no vote okay?
I'm happy to answer this. Absolutely, a no vote is okay for an Aboriginal person, because so long as I think people are informed, like Kate said, if you're informed and your heart and your mind still tell you to vote no, then of course that's okay. I absolutely would have a conversation any day of the week with someone that I know has been informed, than someone that kind of retorts, that false information or the small picture that Kate was just talking about. That's where I get frustrated. So I think if you're informed and you're confident and you're comfortable in your decision, knowing that you've got trusted resources and that's what you think is best, your vote counts just as much as mine.
That was really nicely put. So Kate, you and I have spoken about this quite a lot in our meetings, about having conversations with people who have said that they were just going to go get their name marked off on the day and then just pop a blank piece of paper into the box at the end of the day and donkey vote. Do you guys think that's a good idea, or?
Can I just say no?
I know.
One of my real passions at the moment is for all Australians, whether you're a young voter or an older voter, the idea of donkey voting because you don't know is such a waste of your privilege. Actually, we are part of a democracy, and if you look around the world, there's a whole lot of people who don't live under a democracy. They're not allowed to vote. They don't have that privilege. We actually have that privilege, and it really is a serious privilege, so we should take it seriously. We've got a list on the screen there of where you can go to find out more information, so it's really not hard to talk to someone, find out a little bit more, and then actually cast your vote using that privilege wisely, because this is not an election to choose politicians. This is where every single person who lives in Australia, who's over the age of 18 and is an Australian citizen, is being asked, do you agree with this or not? We're getting this really important chance to be part of updating this living document called a constitution for our time. So don't waste that opportunity. It's a really, really privileged opportunity in my opinion. And I'll pass over to someone else now.
Well, I agree. It's such a privilege to be able to vote. So just saying, well, I don't know enough about it, I won't bother, is a waste of a democracy. Democracy is not perfect. Half of us don't get the government we want most times, but we all have to live together. And so if we know each other's opinions, that's good, and we'll work out ways of cooperating and surviving together and developing together. So it would be a great pity to waste a vote.
I suppose the only other thing I'd say about that too is casting a donkey vote because you don't know, to me, feeds itself into Peter Dutton's slogan of if you don't know, vote no, which is, pretty much the same thing as doing a donkey vote, because you're removing yourself from having any place in the decision. And I just believe that Australia is a much smarter place than that. We're all much smarter than that. We can do better than that. And it doesn't take much to find out, just enough to know which way you should vote.
So I feel like we have touched on the other two questions through conversation. So I was going to move on. If the voice referendum is unsuccessful, what is the next step that could help First Nations feel as though they're being heard?
That's a tough one.
Hmm.
I'd rather wait till October the 15th, when we will be a completely different country, whichever way it goes.
Yeah.
And we will still have to live alongside each other, and hopefully we'll, I don't know, live together cooperatively and make sure that we don't have bad statistics for a section of the population that are, very, a very bad image internationally for Australia, to have a section of the population that are grossly different statistically in measures that ought to be a heritage that we all share of a good life.
I agree. I've had this conversation with a friend who lives in the UK and another friend who lives in Canada, and they're both baffled because in Canada they have constitutional rights, and they're so surprised that Australia doesn't, and how strongly people are opposed to it.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's actually one of my key takeaways from my time with my undergraduate studies, is how far behind the rest of the world we are when you look at other Indigenous peoples. And I was shocked, and I wasn't prepared to learn that, I suppose.
Yeah.
There are so many issues. We're just entering the fire season, and there are people who've lived on this land, seen the weather is changing dramatically, but knowing how to live with the land. And the environment is such an important thing. And Aboriginal people have ways of doing it, and they're modern Aboriginal people. They're involved in fire safety, and they're not trying to say we'll go back to the way we all lived way back then. Modern people who've adapted, and they're still adapting, know that we could do the fire stuff much better, having rangers and so on. So there are so many benefits that we could get from Aboriginal people, whether this goes through or not. But the mindset saying that there is so much knowledge there that we could share amongst all of us, and we all benefit.
I agree.
I wonder, Larissa, did you have an idea about that particular question of what's next if it's a no?
Well, at the current rate we're going now with my people, I mean, when you go on to 15 funerals in 3 months, you know, that's just an indication of what path we're still continuing to tread. I mean, it's very disheartening, and to think of where we could end up. And look, I really don't have an answer. I just refuse to just think about the no at the moment, but it is hard with what's going on at the moment. And yeah, I'm actually lost for words if it is a no. Like, I don't know where to go after this.
And some of those funerals are not old people. They're not.
No, these are 30-year-olds and 40-year-olds and 50-year-olds. I mean, you know, all my aunties and uncles have gone at the age of 50. I've lived through the stolen generation and the transgenerational trauma. My kids feel it. My grandkids will feel it. I didn't have no grandparents when I was in my 30s. So, you know, I want to be around with my grandkids when they turn 30. But should this be a no, like, you know, I don't know what effects it'll have on our people, on my people.
Yeah, heartbreaking is definitely the what it would feel.
Yeah, and it was strange because like when I remember going to the local corner store and I was dressed for a funeral and they asked where I was going and I said, you know, to a funeral. I had my 2 kids with me, 2 little ones. And they said to me, well, they've only been to one funeral in their life and they were in their 30s.
Mm.
And that just shocked me. Like I was just in disbelief. I'd been to hundreds of funerals by the time I was 30. And that I just didn't understand at that time. I think I did, but to hear them ask me and say that they'd only been to 1, 2 funerals because of how their family structure was. Like my family structure is huge, it's extensive, and all that affects our people because we've all got extended families. And I found that really mind blowing that, you know, and that's a big thing for me that sits with me, that'll sit with me forever, I suppose, that, you know, the things that affect us really don't affect non-Aboriginal people. And that's why I think, you know, we do need a voice. We do need to speak up on matters that are about us, that we have answers for. I mean, yeah, that was just mind blowing.
Yeah. Can I just add, to quote a parliamentarian, Julie Bishop, who is the Deputy Prime Minister under several coalition prime ministers, is going to vote yes and is supporting it because she said, I have sat in Parliament for all these years and heard the closing the gap numbers coming through, and we're obviously not doing it right. In some of those categories, we're going backwards. So the very least we can do is actually give a go and listen to the voice, to have people tell us how to do it better, because we're throwing money at it and it's not hitting the spot.
The very definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome.
Indeed.
And I guess the most important part is, what will the ballot paper look like when we go into the election next week on Saturday?
Yes, so you can see, hopefully, I've just popped that up on the screen. It's a very simple matter. There has been a lot of coverage of ticks and crosses and all of those kinds of things. Everybody just needs to understand all you're being asked to do is to write yes in the box or no in the box. So are you voting yes? Write yes. If you're voting no, write no. But that's all it simply says. That the proposed change, which we saw a couple of slides ago, if you agree with it, write yes in the box. If you've decided no, you don't think that's the way to go, you write no in the box. And that's exactly how the ballot paper is going to look there on the screen. So it's a very, very simple matter.
I do have one more question, and I'm putting it out to all 4 of you. What does the voice mean to you individually as a, like?
For me,
you go,
oh,
Sam.
Thanks, Kate. Sorry. For me, it is living proof of reconciliation. This is a concept that's been around now for 30 odd years, on a political spectrum, I suppose. It definitely, in my opinion, it's been tokenistic at best. And the voice for me means some action. You can't. In 1967, they said we see you, we count you, but there hasn't actually been. We're not being heard. So it is a genuine extension of that recognition as people. And in addition, this time, of course, we're being recognised as the first people of the land. And so for me, yeah, it's meaningful.
Yeah. Okay. And I've lived in Armidale for 50 years, and for the last 25 years, I've been involved in the local reconciliation group and have learnt an awful lot about this community. And I just think it's a step that we should do, that it is the beginning of a change. There have been changes, some things have improved, but a lot of things have gone backwards, or they've changed in a way that is not making us all live together cooperatively and respecting each other's strengths and sharing each other's strengths, both culturally and socially. So yeah, I have to say that I am supporting yes. You're probably aware of that. And it would mean, I think the country will be really different on October the 15th, and I hope I'll be proud of it.
Larissa?
So I'm obviously a yes, and if it gets through, I feel that that's an extra step into my people healing. And it's when Kevin Rudd did the apology and said sorry, I didn't really think about it too much, but when I did see that and hear it, like, it brought tears to my eyes, because that finally recognized what they did to my grandmother. And in some ways that took a lot of anger away from me. And I just think it'll be, just one step closer to us healing and accepting us. Like, so as it stands, I'm a little bit, for this to be an actual question, I feel that still makes me less than. And it was confusing. It's still a bit confusing. Like, we're all humans. I think we're all a part of this country, and it is obvious that we are the first people of this country, and it's just to include us. Like, I don't know. I'm just hopeful that it's just a step closer to healing and a bit more change for the betterment.
I think the voice for me as a non-Indigenous person is actually a really exciting opportunity, a first step. And I'm thinking about this from the perspective of my children and thinking about the Australian community that they are a part of. And I'm looking forward to seeing a united Australian community in the future. I know there's been a lot of talk about the voice being divisive, as in dividing. I don't believe that to be the case. I believe we are currently very divided, or we wouldn't have such difficult statistics, just around closing the gap, for example. So I see it as a really positive first step in an exciting future, which my children and grandchildren can be a part of. I want them to belong to an Australia which can benefit, which we already are benefiting from, but there is so much more that we can all benefit from when we actually move away from the fear and the shame of our white history, the colonised history, and say we're all part of this continent. there's so much wonderful history, our First Nations history, which goes back tens of thousands of years. What is not to benefit myself and my children from that amazing history? And also in thinking about, okay, so the voice will allow Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to speak on matters pertaining to themselves. I might benefit from some of the fabulous ideas that may be generated in the solving of issues within individual communities. We all have the opportunity to benefit from this. Whereas if we simply say, oh no, we want everything to stay the same, there's no benefit, because the same is not, there is no benefit for me. There's no benefit for Aboriginal communities or Torres Strait Islander communities at the moment. So for me, it's very exciting. I'm obviously a yes voter. I only see positives, but it is a first step. And who knows what we can do if we are brave enough to take this first step and say, yes, we are all Australians and we're going to do this together. Yeah.
Thank you. Would anyone like to add anything else, or are you guys okay? Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate everything you guys had to say and your contributions, and thank you for being involved.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And good luck with your decision making.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I've already decided. Oh, I'm a very big yes, but yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. I do really appreciate it.
Good luck. And good luck with your further
Thank you.
conversations with the other law students.
Thank you. I hope you guys can make it on Monday night. It would be really nice to have you all there.
Whereabouts will it be?
Online on Zoom, there's a registration link which I can send to Kate afterwards when we're done, and she's more than welcome to
Great.
forward it on as well. But yeah, it would be lovely to have you all there.